The moment Zachariah Foster stepped off the stagecoach into Cheyenne, Wyoming territory on that sweltering July afternoon in 1873, she knew she could never let anyone discover what she had left behind in St. Louis. The dust settled around her worn traveling dress as she clutched a single carpetbag, everything she owned in the world compressed into that one piece of luggage. The town sprawled before her with its wooden storefronts and muddy streets, cattle lowing in distant pens, the smell of manure and sweat thick in the summer air. It was nothing like the refined parlors and gaslit streets she had known, and that was exactly why she had come. A woman in a pressed blue dress approached her with a curious smile. "You must be the new seamstress Mr. Holbrook sent for. I'm Margaret Chen. I run the boarding house on 5th Street. Zachariah managed a smile, though exhaustion pulled at every muscle. "Yes, madam. Thank you for meeting me." "Come along then, dear. You look about ready to collapse. Long journey from Missouri." "You have no idea," Zachariah whispered, following Margaret down the dusty street. The boarding house was clean and modest, with lace curtains that reminded Zachariah too much of her former life. Margaret showed her to a small room on the 2nd floor, barely large enough for a bed and a washstand, but the window overlooked the street and let in the evening breeze. "Mr. Holbrook's shop is just 3 streets over," Margaret said, setting down a pitcher of water. "He's expecting you Monday morning. That gives you tomorrow to rest and get your bearings." After Margaret left, Zachariah sank onto the narrow bed and finally let the tears come. She was 21 years old and had destroyed everything. The daughter of a prominent banker, educated in the finest schools, promised to the son of a judge. And then she had made one terrible mistake that had cost her everything she had ever known. The bruises on her ribs had faded during the long journey west, but the memory remained sharp as broken glass. She woke the next morning to church bells ringing across Cheyenne. Through her window, she watched families in their Sunday best walking toward the white-steepled building at the end of the street. She stayed in her room, unpacking her few belongings, trying to piece together the fragments of who she needed to become. Zachariah Foster, seamstress from St. Louis. No family, no past worth mentioning, just another woman seeking a fresh start in the territories. Monday morning arrived too quickly. She dressed in her plainest clothes and made her way to Holbrook's shop, a narrow storefront wedged between the general store and a law office. Mr. Holbrook was a thin, nervous man with spectacles that constantly slid down his nose. "Can you actually sew?" he asked bluntly, looking her over with skepticism. Zachariah had been sewing since she was 6 years old, first learning from her mother, then from the finest instructors her father's money could buy. She had embroidered tablecloths that had graced the governor's table. "Yes, sir, I can sew." He handed her a torn shirt. "Show me." Her fingers moved with practiced precision, the needle flashing in the morning light streaming through the window. She finished in minutes, the repair nearly invisible. Mr. Holbrook examined it closely, then nodded. "You will do. $20 a month plus Sundays off. You start now." The work was simple but constant. Torn trousers, ripped shirts, hems that needed adjusting. Cowboys and ranch hands brought in their worn clothing, along with occasional orders for new shirts or vests. Zachariah kept her head down and her needle moving, speaking only when necessary. It was on her 3rd day that Preston Parker first walked into the shop. She was bent over a particularly stubborn buttonhole when the door opened, bringing with it the smell of horses and leather and open sky. She looked up to see a man in his mid-20s, tall and lean, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His eyes were a striking shade of gray-green like sage after rain. "Need these mended," he said, his voice low and easy, setting a pile of shirts on the counter. Zachariah rose, smoothing her skirts, suddenly aware of how she must look after hours of work. "Yes, sir, let me see." She examined the shirts, noting the tears in the sleeves and the worn cuffs. Working shirts, well used but carefully maintained. "These will take a few days." "That's fine." He was watching her with an expression she could not quite read. Not the hungry look she had grown accustomed to back in St. Louis, but something gentler. Curious, perhaps. "Name for the order?" she asked, reaching for Mr. Holbrook's ledger. "Preston Parker." "I work at the Double P Ranch about 10 miles north." She wrote it carefully. "Parker, and your given name again." "Preston. Like the town in England, though I have never been further east than Kansas." Something in his easy manner made her almost smile. Almost. She caught herself. "3 days, Mr. Parker. Preston's fine." He touched the brim of his hat. "Much obliged, miss." After he left, Mr. Holbrook emerged from the back room where he had been cutting fabric. "That's Preston Parker. Good man. Works harder than 3 regular cowboys. His father owns the Double P, one of the bigger ranches hereabouts." Zachariah nodded and returned to her work, trying to ignore the strange flutter in her chest. Preston returned exactly 3 days later, in the late afternoon when the shop was quiet. Zachariah had just finished wrapping his mended shirts in brown paper. "Perfect timing," she said, sliding the package across the counter. He unwrapped one to examine it, running his fingers over the careful stitches. "Fine work. Better than fine. You have got real skill." "Thank you." She calculated the cost. "That will be $2. He paid and collected his shirts, but lingered at the counter. "You are new to Cheyenne." It was not a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes, just arrived last week." "And how are you finding it?" "It is different from what I knew." "Where did you come from?" The questions felt dangerous. Zachariah busied herself straightening spools of thread. "Back east, Missouri. Family there." "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. Preston was quiet for a moment. When she finally looked up, his expression was thoughtful but not prying. "Well, Cheyenne's a good town. People here tend to judge folks by who they are now, not where they came from." Something in his words made her throat tight. "That is good to know." "There is a dance this Saturday at the community hall. Most of the town turns out. You might enjoy it, meeting people." "I do not think so, but thank you." He nodded slowly. "Well, if you change your mind, it starts at 7. He touched his hat again. "Good day, Miss Foster." Saturday arrived with a dust storm that turned the sky orange and sent everyone indoors. Zachariah spent the day in her room, mending her own clothes and trying not to think about music and dancing and a cowboy with kind eyes. By evening the storm had passed, leaving the air cool and clean. From her window, she could hear fiddle music starting up at the community hall 3 streets over. She told herself she would not go. She had no business dancing, no business drawing attention, no business pretending she was someone who deserved simple pleasures. But as darkness fell and the music grew louder, loneliness won over caution. She changed into her best dress, a deep green that had somehow survived her hurried departure from St. Louis. It was finer than anything the other women in the boarding house wore, cut in a style that was perhaps too fashionable for a frontier town, but it was all she had. Margaret caught her in the hallway. "My, don't you look lovely. Heading to the dance. I thought I might stop by. Just for a little while." "Good for you, dear. A young woman should have some fun." The community hall was crowded and warm, lanterns casting golden light over the swirling dancers. The band consisted of 3 fiddles, a guitar, and a man playing spoons with enthusiastic rhythm. Zachariah stood near the door, suddenly uncertain. "You came." She turned to find Preston beside her, cleaned up and in a pressed shirt that she recognized as one she had mended. He looked pleased, a smile transforming his usually serious face. "I thought I would see what Cheyenne considers entertainment," she said lightly. "Well, we are not St. Louis, but we do all right." He offered his hand. "Dance with me." Her first instinct was to refuse, but something about his open expression, the way he asked rather than assumed, made her place her hand in his. His palm was calloused from years of ranch work, warm and steady as he led her onto the floor. The fiddles launched into a lively reel. Preston was a competent dancer, moving with the same easy confidence he brought to everything. As they spun through the steps, Zachariah felt something she had not experienced in months loosening in her chest. Not quite happiness, but something approaching it. "You dance well," Preston said during a brief pause in the music. "So do you. Where did a cowboy learn?" My mother insisted, said even ranch hands should have some culture. His expression grew wistful. "She passed 3 years ago, influenza. I am sorry. She would have liked you." She always said a woman with skill in her hands and determination in her eyes was worth 10 fancy debutantes. Zachariah stumbled slightly. Preston caught her easily, his hand firm on her waist. "You all right?" "Yes, just tired, I think." But it was not tiredness. It was the casual mention of debutantes, the life she had fled. She forced herself to keep dancing, to smile, to pretend the past was not clawing at her throat. They danced 3 more numbers before she begged off, claiming the heat. Preston fetched her a cup of punch and walked her outside where the air was cooler. "Thank you," she said. "For the dances, I mean." "My pleasure." He studied her in the lamplight spilling from the hall. "You look sad sometimes, like you are carrying something heavy." The observation was too accurate. Zachariah set down her cup with a trembling hand. "Everyone has things they carry." "That is true enough." He was quiet for a moment. "I just want you to know if you ever need someone to talk to or just someone to sit quiet with, I am a good listener." Tears threatened, she blinked them back. "That is kind of you, not kind, just honest." He glanced back at the hall. "I should let you get home. Can I walk you?" "It is only 3 streets. Still, a gentleman walks a lady home." They walked slowly through the quiet streets, the music fading behind them. Preston did not press for conversation, seeming content with the companionable silence. At the boarding house steps, he touched his hat. "Good night, Miss Foster. I hope you will come to more dances." "Perhaps," she said softly. "Good night, Preston." She watched him walk away, his long stride easy and unhurried, and felt something dangerous stirring in her heart. The next weeks fell into a pattern. Zachariah worked in the shop 6 days a week, her reputation for fine needlework growing. Women began bringing her their best dresses to alter, their wedding gowns to mend. Mr. Holbrook raised her wages to $25 a month. Preston came by every week or so, always with some small item needing repair. A torn vest, a button to replace. Once, a split seam that could have been easily fixed by anyone with basic skills. Zachariah suspected he was inventing reasons, but she never commented. She looked forward to his visits with an anticipation that both thrilled and terrified her. He always stayed to talk if the shop was not busy. He told her about the ranch, about the cattle and horses, about the challenges of making a living from the land. She learned that he loved the work despite its hardships, that he had dreams of expanding the ranch someday, that he was 26 years old and had never married because he had never found a woman who made him want to stay home nights instead of sleeping under the stars. She told him almost nothing about herself, deflecting his gentle questions with vague answers. But she listened, and sometimes laughed at his stories, and found herself relaxing in his presence in ways she had not thought possible anymore. One afternoon in late August, a woman came into the shop that made Zachariah's blood run cold. She was perhaps 40, well dressed in traveling clothes with sharp eyes that took in everything. "Good afternoon," the woman said. "I am looking for the seamstress. I need several dresses altered." "That would be me." Zachariah's voice was steady despite her hammering heart. There was something in the woman's accent, the St. Louis vowels, that marked her as being from back east. The woman pulled out 3 dresses from a large bag. "I am visiting my brother here in Cheyenne. These need to be taken in. I have lost weight since they were made." As Zachariah examined the dresses, her hands began to shake. They were from Madame Bouvier's shop on Market Street in St. Louis. She had been fitted for her wedding trousseau in that very shop, just months ago. "Are you all right, dear?" the woman asked. "You have gone quite pale." "I am fine, just the heat." Zachariah forced herself to focus. "These are lovely dresses, fine work." "Yes, from a shop in St. Louis, the finest dressmaker in the city." The woman watched her closely. "Have you ever been to St. Louis?" "No," Zachariah lied. "But I have heard it is very grand." "It is, though it has been quite the scandal this summer. The daughter of one of our most prominent families ran away just before her wedding, left her fiancé at the altar, as they say. Caused quite the uproar." Zachariah's fingers tightened on the fabric. "How unfortunate, indeed. The family is offering a reward for information about her whereabouts. She apparently stole some valuable jewelry when she left." The woman's eyes were too knowing. Quite the shameful affair. The accusation of theft was new, a lie to justify the family's humiliation. Zachariah had taken nothing but her own clothes and the small amount of money she had saved from birthday gifts over the years. "I can have these ready by Friday," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Excellent. My name is Mrs. Patterson. I am staying at the Cheyenne Hotel." After the woman left, Zachariah had to sit down, her legs suddenly unreliable. The past had found her. Maybe not completely, not yet, but it was circling closer. She thought about running again, but she was so tired of running. And something about this town, about the work she was doing, about Preston, made her want to stay. That evening, a knock came at her boarding house door. Margaret called up the stairs. "Miss Foster, you have a visitor." Zachariah came down to find Preston in the parlor, hat in hand, looking uncomfortable among the floral wallpaper and doilies. "Preston, is something wrong? Could we take a walk? I need to talk to you." Fear spiked through her, but she nodded and fetched her shawl. They walked toward the edge of town where the buildings gave way to open prairie, the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I heard something today," Preston said finally. "At the general store. There was a woman from St. Louis talking about some scandal back there. A runaway bride or some such." Zachariah's heart stopped. "Oh, she seemed mighty interested in you, asking questions about the new seamstress, where you came from." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "Zachariah, I do not care what happened back in Missouri. I do not care if you were this woman she was talking about or someone else entirely. I just need you to know that." "Why are you telling me this?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Because I have watched you these past weeks, working so hard, always looking over your shoulder like you expect something terrible to catch up with you. Because you flinch when men raise their voices. Because you are the most capable, kindest, loneliest person I have ever met." He took a careful step closer. "And because I am falling in love with you, and I want you to know that nothing you could tell me would change that." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You do not know what you are saying." "I know exactly what I am saying." His voice was gentle but firm. "I know you are running from something. I know you are scared. And I know that whatever happened, you did not deserve it. I can see that in you, Zachariah." "How can you possibly know that?" "Because I know you. The woman who stays late to fix a little boy's torn shirt for free because his mother cannot afford it. Who teaches Margaret's daughter fancy stitches in the evenings. who works herself to exhaustion rather than accept charity. That woman could never do anything truly shameful. She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. There are things you do not understand. Then help me understand. Tell me. They sat on a fallen log at the prairie's edge, the town lights beginning to glow in the gathering darkness. And Zachariah, who had sworn never to tell anyone, found the words spilling out. My name is Zachariah Foster, that part is true. My father was Richard Foster, a banker in St. Louis. We were prominent society, everything proper and respectable. Her voice was hollow, reciting facts about a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. I was engaged to be married to Gerald Morrison. His father was a circuit judge. It was considered an excellent match. Preston listened without interrupting, his presence steady beside her. Gerald was charming in public. Everyone thought I was so lucky. But in private, when no one was watching, he was different. He would grab my arm hard enough to bruise if I disagreed with him, say cruel things about my intelligence, my appearance. Tell me I should be grateful he was willing to marry me despite my flaws. She wrapped her shawl tighter, suddenly cold despite the warm evening. I told myself it would get better after the wedding, that I was being too sensitive. But it got worse, Preston said quietly. 2 weeks before the wedding, we were alone in my father's study. I suggested we postpone, that I was not ready. He became furious. He grabbed me and threw me against the desk, told me I belonged to him now, that I would do exactly as I was told. Her hand unconsciously went to her ribs, remembering. When I tried to fight back, he hit me. Not in the face where it would show, but my ribs, my arms. He said if I ever tried to leave him, he would make sure I had nowhere to go, that no one would believe me over him. Preston's jaw was tight, but he remained silent, letting her speak. I knew then that if I married him, he would kill me eventually. Maybe not right away, but someday when his anger went too far. So that night, I packed what I could carry and I ran. I took a train west, got off at random stops, changed directions. Eventually, I ended up here. She finally looked at him. I am not a runaway bride who got cold feet. I am a woman who chose to survive. Thank you for telling me, Preston said. That took courage, Mrs. Patterson is claiming I stole jewelry. I did not. I took nothing but my own belongings. But they are powerful people. They can say whatever they want and be believed. What do you want to do? The question surprised her. Not what should she do or what would he do, but what did she want? I want to stay. I have built something here, small as it is. I want to keep building. Then you stay. It is not that simple. If she recognizes me, if she tells people, they could send me back, force me to marry him. No one is forcing you anywhere. Preston's voice had an edge of steel she had never heard before. You are over 18, you have committed no crime, and even if they tried, they would have to go through me first, and my father, and every decent person in this town, which is most of them. You cannot know that. I know this town, I know these people, and I know that if you give them a chance, they will stand by you. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. Let me help you, please. Looking into his eyes, seeing nothing but acceptance and determination, Zachariah felt something shift inside her. She had been running and hiding for so long, she had forgotten what it felt like to have someone stand beside her. What if she already knows? Zachariah whispered. What if she has already sent word back to St. Louis? Then we deal with it, together. That word, together, undid something in her. She leaned into him and he wrapped his arms around her, holding her while she cried, not for what she had lost, but for what she might, impossibly, be allowed to keep. The next morning, Zachariah went to work with a knot of dread in her stomach, but the day passed normally. Mrs. Patterson did not return, and no marshal appeared to drag her back to Missouri. Preston came by at noon with a basket from the hotel dining room. Thought you might not have eaten. They shared cold chicken and biscuits in the back room of the shop. He told her about his morning, the colt he was training, the fence that needed mending. Normal, everyday things that felt precious because they meant he still saw her the same way. "I talked to my father last night," Preston said as they were finishing. "Told him about you. Not everything, just that you were in trouble and might need help." Zachariah froze. "Preston, you should not have done that. He said anyone who works as hard as you deserves a chance. Said if you need a place to stay, a place where no one from St. Louis would think to look, there is always room at the ranch. I cannot impose like that. It is not imposing. We could use someone who can sew, truth be told. The ranch hands are always tearing something and I am terrible at mending." His expression grew serious. "But more than that, it is far enough outside town that you would have warning if anyone came looking, and you would not be alone." The offer was tempting, terrifyingly so. "I have my job here. Mr. Holbrook could send work out with me. You could do the mending at the ranch, bring it back when it is done, or you could find other work. My father always needs help with the books, the correspondence. You are educated, you could do that easily." "Why are you doing this?" Preston reached across the makeshift table and took her hand. "Because I meant what I said yesterday. I am falling in love with you, Zachariah, and because even if I were not, it would be the right thing to do. No woman should have to live in fear." Before she could respond, the shop bell rang. Mr. Holbrook called from the front room. "Miss Foster, customer." She squeezed Preston's hand once and went to attend to business. But his offer stayed with her through the rest of the day, a possibility she was afraid to examine too closely. Friday arrived with Mrs. Patterson's return for her altered dresses. Zachariah had them ready, wrapped and perfect. The woman examined each alteration minutely. "Excellent work," she admitted. "You have real talent. Where did you learn to sew like this?" "My mother taught me," Zachariah said. "That much was true, You know, you remind me of someone. A girl I saw once at a society function in St. Louis. Same coloring, similar features." Zachariah's heart hammered, but she kept her expression neutral. "I have one of those faces, I suppose. People are always thinking they know me from somewhere." Mrs. Patterson paid and gathered her dresses, but paused at the door. "If you were ever in St. Louis and found yourself in trouble, you should know that the good families there take care of their own. If you came back, explained yourself, they might be forgiving. I have never been to St. Louis," Zachariah said firmly, "but I thank you for the advice." After the woman left, Zachariah had to sit down, her hands shaking. She knew a threat when she heard one, wrapped in polite words though it was. Mrs. Patterson suspected or knew who she was, and was giving her a chance to return voluntarily before they came for her. That evening, she found Margaret in the kitchen and gave her notice. "I have accepted a position at the Double P Ranch. I will be leaving Sunday." Margaret looked disappointed but unsurprised. "That Preston Parker has been courting you, has he not?" "Cannot say I am shocked. He is a good man, dear. You could do far worse." "It is not like that, it is just a job." But even as she said it, Zachariah knew it was a lie. Sunday morning dawned clear and cool, hints of autumn in the air though it was only September. Preston arrived with a wagon to collect her few belongings. The goodbye with Margaret was brief and warm. "You come visit now," Margaret said, hugging her tight, "and do not be a stranger." The ride to the Double P took nearly 2 hours, following rough roads through rolling prairie. Preston pointed out landmarks as they went, telling her the history of the area, the various ranches they passed. The Double P itself was larger than Zachariah had imagined. The main house was a sprawling structure of wood and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around 2 sides. Beyond it were barns, corrals, bunkhouses, and various outbuildings. Cattle dotted the distant hills. Preston's father, Patrick Parker, met them on the porch. He was in his 50s, weather-beaten and solid, with gray in his hair and the same kind eyes as his son. "Miss Foster, welcome. Preston tells me you are in need of honest work and a safe place. We have both." "Thank you, Mr. Parker. I appreciate your generosity." "No generosity about it. We need the help." He led them inside, where a middle-aged woman with flour on her apron greeted them warmly. "This is Rosa. She manages the house and the cooking. Rosa, this is Miss Foster." "Welcome, welcome," Rosa said, her accent carrying hints of Mexico. "Come, I show you your room." The room was small but comfortable, with a real bed, a chest of drawers, and a window overlooking the eastern pastures. It was more space than Zachariah had had at the boarding house. "You settle in," Rosa said. "Dinner is at 6, nothing fancy but plenty of it." After Rosa left, Zachariah sank onto the bed and let herself breathe. She was 10 miles outside of Cheyenne, surrounded by people she barely knew, dependent on their kindness. It should have been terrifying. Instead, for the first time in months, she felt almost safe. Dinner that evening was a lively affair. Besides Preston and his father, there were 2 ranch hands who ate with the family, an older man named Sam and a young one called Tommy, who could not have been more than 19. The conversation flowed easily. Talk of cattle prices and weather and the upcoming harvest dance in town. No one asked Zachariah intrusive questions. No one treated her as anything other than a new member of the household. By the end of the meal, some of the tension in her shoulders had eased. After dinner, Preston walked her outside to see the sunset. They stood at the corral fence watching the horses nose at their evening grain. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Overwhelmed, grateful, scared." She glanced at him. "Your father is very kind to take me in like this. He is a good judge of character. He likes you. He does not know me. He knows what I told him, that you are hardworking and honest and in need of a safe place. That is enough for him." Zachariah was quiet for a moment, watching the sunset paint the clouds in shades of rose and gold. "Preston, back in town, you said you were falling in love with me. I did, and I meant it. You barely know me. I know enough. I know how you treat people with kindness even when you are hurting. I know you have more courage than anyone I have ever met. I know that when you smile, which is too rare, it lights up your whole face." He turned to face her fully. "I know I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. I am broken," she whispered. "What Gerald did to me, it broke something inside. I do not know if I can be what you deserve." Preston reached out and gently cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear she had not realized was falling. "You are not broken. You are surviving. There is a difference. What if I can never be normal again? What if I can never be truly happy? Then we figure it out together. One day at a time." His eyes searched hers. "I am not asking you to marry me tomorrow, Zachariah. I am not asking you to be anything other than who you are. I am just asking you to let me stand beside you and see where this goes." She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. It would be so easy to let herself fall for him completely, to let herself hope. But hope was dangerous. Hope could be taken away. "I need time," she finally said. "I need to know I am safe first, that they are not coming for me. That is fair. I can wait." He lowered his hand but stayed close. "In the meantime, you work, you rest, you heal. And I will be right here." The next week settled into a new routine. Zachariah did mending for the ranch hands and helped Rosa with the household tasks. Patrick put her to work on the ranch books as well, and she discovered she had a head for numbers. The accounts had been in disarray, but she organized them methodically, finding errors and inefficiencies that had been costing the ranch money. "You are worth twice what we are paying you. Patrick said one evening, reviewing her work. "These books have not been this clear in years." "I am happy to help." "No, you are earning your keep and then some. I am raising your wages to $40 a month, plus room and board." It was more money than she had ever earned, enough to start saving, to build something for herself. The independence was intoxicating. Preston was patient, true to his word. He did not pressure her, did not demand more than she could give. But he was always there, a steady presence. They fell into the habit of evening walks after dinner, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his childhood, about his mother's death, and how it had changed his father. She told him about growing up in St. Louis, carefully editing out the society details but sharing memories of her mother teaching her to sew, her brother teaching her to fish in the river before he died of fever when she was 12. Slowly, almost without realizing it, Zachariah began to relax. Weeks passed without any word from St. Louis, without any sign of pursuit. The work was satisfying, the people kind. And Preston, with his quiet devotion and infinite patience, was becoming essential to her happiness in ways that both thrilled and terrified her. It was in late October, with the first frost coating the prairie grass, that Gerald Morrison came to Cheyenne. Preston heard about it in town when he went for supplies. He came back to the ranch riding hard, his face grim. Zachariah was in the office working on the books when he burst in. "He is here," Preston said without preamble. "Your former fiancé. He is in Cheyenne, asking questions about you." All the blood drained from Zachariah's face. "How do you know it is him?" "Man fitting the description from St. Louis claims his fiancée ran away and he is here to bring her home." Showed a photograph to people at the hotel, the photograph. There had been a formal engagement portrait taken just weeks before she fled. Gerald would have kept copies. "Did anyone tell him about me?" Her voice was remarkably steady. "Not that I heard. Most folks in town know you work here now, but they are not inclined to give information to strangers." Preston came closer. "Zachariah, you need to decide what you want to do. If you want to run again, I will help you. We can get you on a train tonight, send you somewhere he will never find you." "I am so tired of running." "Then we face him, but you do not have to do it alone. He will make trouble. He has money, influence. He can cause problems for you and your father." Preston's expression hardened. "Let him try. This is Wyoming territory, not Missouri. Out here, what matters is what kind of man you are, not who your father is. And from what you have told me, Gerald Morrison is no kind of man at all." "What are you suggesting?" "That we go into town tomorrow and confront him. You tell him to his face that you are not going back, that he has no claim on you, with witnesses. Make it clear in public. That could get ugly. Maybe, but you cannot spend your life hiding." His voice softened. "You have done nothing wrong, Zachariah, nothing." And it is time he faced that truth. She wanted to argue, to explain all the reasons it was a terrible idea, but Preston was right. She could keep running forever or she could stand her ground. "All right," she said. "Tomorrow." That night, Zachariah barely slept. She kept imagining Gerald's face, his fury, his hands. But she also imagined saying no to him, claiming her own life with Preston beside her. They set out early the next morning, Preston driving the wagon with Zachariah beside him and Patrick following on horseback. Rosa had insisted on coming too, appearing at the wagon with her shawl and a determined expression. "You do not face this alone," Rosa said simply, climbing up beside Zachariah. Cheyenne was bustling when they arrived. Preston headed straight for the hotel, tying up outside. Gerald was in the dining room, visible through the window, eating breakfast with the satisfied air of a man who expected to get his way. He looked up as they entered, his gaze sliding over Preston and Patrick before landing on Zachariah. His expression transformed, shifting from boredom to shock to fury in seconds. "Zachariah," he said, rising, "thank God, I have been searching everywhere for you." "Hello, Gerald." Her voice only shook slightly. He moved toward her, but Preston stepped between them, casual but unmistakable in his positioning. "Mr. Morrison, I presume." Gerald looked him up and down with obvious disdain. "Who are you?" "Preston Parker. Miss Foster works for my family. Miss Foster is my fiancé. Our wedding is long overdue." Gerald's voice took on the smooth, reasonable tone she remembered too well. "Zachariah, darling, you have had your adventure. It is time to come home now. Your father is worried sick. I am not going anywhere with you." His expression flickered, anger showing through the veneer. "Do not be difficult. You have embarrassed both our families enough." I said no. Zachariah stepped forward, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "I am not your fiancé. I am not your anything. I left because you hurt me, and I will not give you the chance to do it again." "Hurt you? I never laid a hand on you." The lie was smooth, practiced. He looked to Preston, to Patrick, playing the wronged party. She was always dramatic, imagining slights where none existed. "It is actually quite sad. I am not imagining anything. You hit me, Gerald. You told me you would make my life miserable if I tried to leave, so I left." Gerald's mask slipped entirely. "You ungrateful little bitch. After everything my family did for you, the status we offered, and you run off like some common whore." Preston moved faster than Zachariah would have thought possible, grabbing Gerald by his fancy vest and slamming him against the wall. "You will not speak to her that way. Get your hands off me, you ignorant cowboy, or I will have you arrested for assault. Go ahead and try." Patrick's voice cut through the tension. "But you should know that Sheriff Williams is a friend of mine, and he tends to be real interested in men who beat women." A small crowd had gathered, hotel guests and townspeople drawn by the commotion. Margaret from the boarding house was there, and Mr. Holbrook, and several of the ranchers Preston had introduced her to at dances and town gatherings. Margaret stepped forward. "I believe her. I saw the way she flinched when men moved too quickly. I wondered. She has been nothing but honest and hardworking the whole time she has been here," Mr. Holbrook added. "Cannot say the same for fancy men who come looking to drag women back against their will." Gerald looked around, clearly realizing public opinion was not in his favor. "This is absurd. Zachariah, your father will be extremely disappointed when I tell him you are living on a ranch with unmarried men, working like a common laborer." "Then he will be disappointed," Zachariah said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "I would rather work honestly here than live as your wife. You are throwing away everything. Your position, your future, your reputation. No, I am choosing my life." She took a deep breath. "Go back to St. Louis, Gerald. Tell my father, tell your father, tell everyone that I am not coming back. Find someone else to marry, someone you can control. It was never going to be me." Gerald's face was mottled with rage, but he was surrounded by hostile witnesses. He straightened his vest with sharp, angry movements. "You will regret this, both of you. My father has connections. I can make life very difficult for you out here." "I reckon you can try," Patrick said mildly, "but threatening people is not going to help your case. Now, I think it is time you left Cheyenne." Gerald looked at Zachariah one more time, and she saw the calculation in his eyes, the wheels turning as he considered whether she was worth the effort of further pursuit. She lifted her chin and met his gaze squarely, unafraid. Whatever he saw made him deflate slightly. Keep her then. She was always more trouble than she was worth. He grabbed his hat and stormed out, shoving past Preston hard enough to make it clear it was deliberate. The silence after he left was thick. Then Margaret came over and hugged Zachariah tight. "You are a brave girl. I am proud of you." Others echoed the sentiment, offering words of support. The hotel manager apologized for not throwing Gerald out immediately. The sheriff, who had arrived too late for the confrontation but heard the story from witnesses, assured Zachariah that if Gerald returned, he would be escorted out of town. Through it all, Preston stayed close, his hand on the small of her back, grounding her. On the ride back to the ranch, Zachariah finally let herself cry, great heaving sobs of relief and residual fear. Rosa held her on one side, Preston on the other, while Patrick drove the wagon and tactfully pretended not to notice. "It is over," Preston murmured against her hair. "He is gone. You are free. What if he comes back? Then we deal with it. But I do not think he will. You humiliated him in front of witnesses. Men like that, their pride matters more than anything. He will go home and tell some story where he is the injured party, and he will find another woman to torment." Preston pulled back to look at her. "But it will not be you. Never again." That night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Zachariah found Preston on the porch, watching the stars. She sat beside him in companionable silence for a while. "Thank you," she finally said, "for standing with me today." "Always. I mean it. You could have stayed out of it, avoided all the trouble, but you did not." "Of course I did not." He turned to face her. "Zachariah, I told you weeks ago that I am falling in love with you. After today, I need to be more honest. I am not falling, I have fallen. Completely, irrevocably in love with you." Her breath caught. "Preston, you do not have to say anything back. I know you need time to heal, to trust again. I am willing to wait as long as it takes." He took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "But I wanted you to know. So there is no doubt, no question. I love you, Zachariah Foster. I love your strength and your kindness and your determination. I love the way you lose yourself in your sewing, tongue between your teeth in concentration. I love how you laugh at Tommy's terrible jokes even though they are not funny. I love who you are, all of you, including the parts you think are broken." Tears slid down her face. "I do not know how to do this, how to trust someone with my heart again." "Then do not trust me with all of it yet. Just give me a piece. Let me prove I will keep it safe." She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder, and felt his arms come around her carefully, always giving her room to pull away if she needed. But she did not need to. For the first time, being held felt safe instead of suffocating. "I think I might love you too," she whispered. "I am scared to, but I think I do." "Then that is enough. For now, that is more than enough." The next months were the happiest Zachariah could remember. Winter came to Wyoming with fierce beauty, snow blanketing the prairie and ice forming fantastical shapes on the window panes. The ranch slowed its pace, but there was still plenty of work. Zachariah helped Rosa with the winter preserving, managed the accounts, and sewed warmer clothes for everyone. Preston courted her properly, with evening walks when the weather allowed and games of cards by the fire when it did not. He taught her to ride, patient through her initial fear and triumphant when she finally cantered across a pasture, laughing with exhilaration. She taught him fancy stitches one snowy afternoon, both of them collapsing in laughter when his attempts looked like a tangled mess. He kissed her for the first time on Christmas Eve, after the ranch hands had turned in and the house was quiet. They were alone by the fire, and he leaned over slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When their lips met, gentle and sweet, Zachariah felt something lock into place inside her heart. "I love you," she said when they pulled apart. "I am not scared to say it anymore. I love you, Preston Parker." His smile was incandescent. "I love you too, so very much." They married in March, when the prairie was just beginning to show hints of green and the creeks were running high with snowmelt. It was a simple ceremony in the Cheyenne church, with most of the town in attendance. Margaret cried happy tears, and Rosa made a feast that lasted all afternoon. Patrick welcomed Zachariah as a daughter, and the ranch hands presented them with a hand-carved headboard for their bed. That night, alone in the room they would now share, Preston was infinitely patient, letting Zachariah set the pace, murmuring reassurances and love with every touch. When she finally cried, it was not from pain or fear but from the overwhelming relief of being loved so thoroughly and gently. "You all right?" Preston asked, holding her close afterward. "Better than all right. I never thought I could have this, feel this. You deserve this and more. You deserve every happiness." She traced the line of his jaw, marveling that this good man was now her husband. "I want to build a life with you, a real life. Children, maybe, someday. I would like that." He kissed her forehead. "But there is no rush. We have all the time in the world." They did take their time. The first year of marriage was spent learning each other, building trust that grew deeper with every day. Zachariah bloomed under Preston's steady affection, the shadows slowly lifting from her eyes. She took over the ranch accounts entirely, implementing systems that improved efficiency and profits. Patrick relied on her judgment for major purchases and decisions. The ranch hands treated her with easy respect, and neighboring ranchers sought her advice on bookkeeping. In the second year, she became pregnant. The pregnancy was difficult at first, plagued by sickness, but Preston was attentive and Rosa knew every remedy. When their son was born in late spring of 1876, red-faced and squalling, Preston cried as he held him for the first time. "He is perfect," Preston whispered. "What should we name him?" "What was your mother's maiden name?" "Hughes." "Then let us call him James Hughes Parker." They called him Jamie, and he was indeed perfect. Preston was a devoted father, walking the floor with the baby when he cried at night, changing nappies without complaint, singing old cowboy songs in his terrible voice until Jamie giggled. Zachariah watched her husband with their son and felt a contentment so complete it was almost painful. This was what she had run toward when she fled St. Louis, even if she had not known it then. Not escape, but the possibility of love without conditions, family without fear. When Jamie was 2, Patrick fell from his horse and broke his leg badly. At 62, the injury took longer to heal than it should have. Preston took over more of the ranch operations, with Zachariah managing the business end. They made a formidable team. "You know," Patrick said one evening, watching them work together on the books while Jamie played with wooden blocks at their feet, "I always hoped Preston would find a woman who could be his true partner. Glad my boy was smart enough to recognize you when he found you." "I am the lucky one," Zachariah said. "You all gave me a second chance when I had no right to expect one. Everyone deserves a second chance, especially when they never did anything wrong in the first place." A letter arrived that summer, forwarded from the boarding house. Zachariah recognized her father's handwriting and almost threw it in the fire unopened. But curiosity won out. The letter was brief, stiff with formality, but it said what she had never expected to hear. Her father had heard about Gerald Morrison's true nature, finally, after another woman came forward with similar stories of abuse. The wedding plans to another prominent family had fallen apart spectacularly. Gerald had been forced to leave St. Louis in disgrace. Her father did not apologize, not directly, but he acknowledged that she might have had reasons for leaving. He included information about her modest inheritance from her mother, money that was legally hers. If she provided banking information, he would have it transferred. Zachariah showed the letter to Preston that night. "I do not know what to do." "What do you want to do?" "Part of me wants to burn it and never think about St. Louis again. But another part thinks about that money, what it could do for the ranch, for Jamie's future. The money is yours." It was always yours. Preston took her hand. If you want to contact him, set up the transfer, that is fine. If you want to cut ties forever, that is fine too. Either way, I support you. She wrote back, a short letter providing the banking information but making clear she had no interest in reconciliation. The money arrived 2 months later, a substantial sum that they used to buy more land and improve the ranch infrastructure. Years passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. Jamie grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved horses and followed his father everywhere. Zachariah gave birth to a daughter when Jamie was 4, a tiny thing they named Clara after Preston's mother. Then another son 2 years later, whom they called Thomas after Patrick's brother who had died young. The ranch prospered under their joint management. Zachariah's business acumen combined with Preston's skill with cattle and horses made the Double P one of the most successful ranches in Wyoming. Patrick, though slowed by age, remained active and deeply involved, delighting in his grandchildren. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Preston took Zachariah back to Cheyenne for a rare night alone. They stayed at the hotel, now under new management but still the nicest accommodation in town. At dinner, Preston produced a small velvet box. "You already gave me a ring," Zachariah said, smiling. "That was for our wedding. This is for our anniversary, for 10 years of the happiest life I could have imagined." Inside was a locket of worked gold, delicate and beautiful. She opened it to find a tiny photograph of their 3 children on one side and a lock of Preston's hair on the other. "It is perfect," she breathed. "I love you as much now as I did the day we married. More, even, because now I know every part of you and I love all of them." She reached across the table and took his hand. "I never thought I could be this happy. When I stepped off that stagecoach 14 years ago, I was just trying to survive. You gave me so much more than survival. You gave me everything: purpose, love, a family. I am the lucky one." Zachariah Parker. That night, wrapped in her husband's arms in the hotel room, Zachariah thought back to that frightened girl who had run from St. Louis with nothing but a carpet bag and desperation. If she could tell her younger self anything, it would be that the fear would pass, that love without conditions was real, that she would find a home where she was valued not for her family name or her social position, but for herself. More children came in the following years, each one welcomed with joy. The ranch grew and prospered, becoming one of the largest in Wyoming. When Patrick passed peacefully in his sleep at 71, Preston inherited the Double P with Zachariah as full partner in all but legal name. They hosted barn dances that became legendary in the county, their home always open to those in need. When other women arrived in Cheyenne running from situations like Zachariah had fled, she quietly helped them find work and safety, never asking more questions than necessary. Jamie grew into a fine young man who loved ranching as much as his father. Clara surprised everyone by having a gift for training horses that surpassed even Preston's. Thomas wanted to be a lawyer, to Preston's bemused pride. The younger children were still finding their paths. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration that lasted 3 days. Children and grandchildren, for Jamie had married a sweet girl from town and had 2 babies of his own. Friends from across the territory. Ranch hands past and present. Preston pulled Zachariah away from the festivities as the sun was setting, walking her out to the pasture where he had first told her he loved her. 25 years, he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. How did we get so lucky? I do not believe in luck anymore, Zachariah said, leaning back against his chest. I believe in choices. I chose to trust you. You chose to love me without conditions. We chose each other every day. Best choice I ever made. She turned in his arms to face him. This man who had given her everything by asking nothing in return. His dark hair was now streaked with gray. Lines creased his face from years of sun and wind and laughter, but his eyes still held the same gentle devotion they had when he first walked into that tailor shop so many years ago. I love you, Preston Parker. Thank you for seeing me when I could not see myself. Thank you for standing beside me when I thought I had to stand alone. Thank you for this life. He kissed her, tender and deep, and she tasted 25 years of love in that kiss. All the struggles overcome, the fears conquered, the joys shared. Behind them, music from the party drifted across the prairie. Ahead of them, the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, promising another tomorrow together. I love you too, Preston murmured against her lips. Today and all the days to come. They stood there as darkness fell, two people who had found each other when both needed it most, who had built a life of love and trust from the ashes of fear and shame. The prairie wind whispered around them, carrying the sound of children laughing and cattle lowing and all the beautiful mundane music of a life well lived. Zachariah had learned that shame was not hers to carry for being hurt, that the past did not define the future, and that love, true love, asked only that you be yourself. Preston had learned that sometimes the most precious things came damaged and scared, needing only patience and acceptance to bloom. Together, they had learned that home was not a place but a person, and they had found theirs in each other. As they walked back toward the house hand in hand, Zachariah looked at the lamplight glowing in the windows, heard the sounds of family and friends, felt the solid presence of the man beside her. This was her life now. Not the shameful secret of what she had fled, but the proud reality of what she had built. She was Zachariah Parker, wife and mother, rancher and businesswoman, survivor and thriver. And she was, at last and always, exactly where she belonged.